We hope this video helps you as plan fiduciaries gain control of your plans so that you and your employees can get the utmost value for your plan.
One of the first things we're going to talk about today are the service provider fee disclosure rules. And the first thing to be aware of what types of plans are covered by these rules really comes down to any qualified plan, your defined benefit plan, 401k plan, ERISA 403b plans. The plans that are exempt from the rules are welfare benefit plans and IRA-based retirement plans.
And Bill, they also apply to employer plans, whether or not it's for-profit or not-for-profit, right?
Correct. Once you determine whether your plan is covered by these rules, you then have to determine who is the responsible plan fiduciary. You then also have to determine who are the covered service providers related to your plan. And that really comes down to three categories. The platform provider or plan record keeper. You then have the investment advisor or broker. The third category is the third-party administrator or other plan providers that receive some form of indirect compensation from the plan assets. Best example is the third-party administrator who receives some type of compensation from the mutual funds that are offered under the plan. If they're receiving indirect compensation, they are required to provide you with a fee disclosure.
Not every entity providing services may be covered under these rules. Once you receive a disclosure of what the plan is being charged, you as the employer, the plan sponsor, responsible fiduciary, now have to determine whether those fees are reasonable, because the labor laws do not allow you to enter into an unreasonable contract. One way you could do this obviously would be to go out and shop. Go shop your plan, do a request for proposal, an RFP, and see what other providers would charge to service your plan. Other ways you might do it is you may use a benchmarking service on the internet and determine for yourself whether these fees appear reasonable given other benchmarks, or you may hire an advisor who will look at the fees for you and based on other data determine for you whether or not they appear reasonable.
If the service provider fails to disclose the fees to you, then there is a prohibited transaction. They are responsible to pay a 15% penalty. Likewise, you as the responsible plan fiduciary have an obligation to request this. The final regulations say you have to disclose to the DOL that you have not received the fee disclosure after requesting it 1 and 2 times, and you have to decide, and really the final regulations say you should terminate services with that provider.
What the Department of Labor is concerned about is that it doesn't believe that participants currently are sufficiently informed of the fees they're paying for their plan investment options. For the first time, participants are going to receive in writing a summary of information of exactly what it is they're paying to participate in their retirement plan. So there's an annual disclosure and a quarterly disclosure. Let's just look for a moment at the annual disclosure. This disclosure, as it's termed, is something that's going to be given to participants once per year or for any participant when they're first entering the plan. And it's basically going to disclose 3 broad elements. One, it's going to explain to participants how they invest in the plan. What are the investment rules? 2, it's going to tell them what the investment, or actually what their costs are going to be from an administrative viewpoint. For example, what their share of the plan's administrative costs are going to be and what their individual costs may be for certain transactions. For example, most plans charge participants individually for distributions and loans. They'll now know that. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the annual disclosure is going to provide a comparative chart which will provide very detailed information on all of the investment alternatives offered under the plan.
There's an initial requirement, and then there's an ongoing requirement, correct?
That's right. When somebody first enters the plan, you're saying, they're going to have to receive what we would call the annual disclosure, or the full disclosure.
The other piece of the fee disclosure rules is the quarterly disclosure that needs to go to plan participants. And really, the quarterly disclosure is going to disclose the actual expenses paid from participant accounts.
We've got service provider disclosure due on or before July 1, And then thereafter, anytime you hire a new provider or any current provider changes their fees. Then you have your annual, your participant disclosure. If you're a calendar year plan, which most are, that is due by August 30th, which is not much time after you receive the provider disclosure. Then you've got the first quarterly participant fee disclosure due in early November.
Right, and that first quarterly disclosure is tied to the calendar quarter in which the initial disclosure is made.
What we see going forward probably is that many employers will use electronic disclosure for the quarterly information, but may not be able to do so at least for all of the annual information. The Department of Labor is aware of the fact that their rules are outdated and has indicated that they are going to be changing them and updating them in the future. So if you're going to do things electronically, make sure that it satisfies the rules.
Thank you, Bill and Roger. Fee disclosures. As Bill and Roger talked about, it's not just about deadlines. It's about what you need to think about on an annual basis, what you need to do if you change service providers, and what's a reasonable fee.